to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Boxing insider Rick Lacier's recent reaction to Bill Haney's claims that Gervonta Davis turned down $20 million. Rick said, Bill saying that Tank Davis turned down a guaranteed $20 million to fight Devin.
If that ain't the funniest Bama alive, did this guy just go in here and say, you don't know who to talk to, and then say, you know who to talk to?
My question is, who is the guarantor of the $20 million? Because Tank versus Devin Haney aren't doing anywhere near what Tank versus Ryan Garcia did.
Rick's sources put the number for Devin Haney's latest pay-per-view appearance in the neighborhood of 50,000 pay-per-view buys, which really isn't a lot.
Raw numbers. 50,000 pay-per-view buys multiplied by a price point of roughly $79, $80. That only gets you $4 million at the box office, and those are raw numbers, not factoring in operational costs.
What the show costs to put on in its entirety, and all the undercard fighters, everything that you had to pay to do it.
Devin's last two fights were pay-per-views. The first one did approximately 150,000 pay-per-view buys here in the US of A. 150,000 multiplied by a price point of $80 gets you roughly $12 million.
50,000 pay-per-view buys multiplied by a price point of $80 gets you roughly $4 million.
These are not big numbers, and we are now expected to believe, per Bill Haney.
So you the boss, but you're not the boss. But I don't know who to talk to, but I know who to talk to. Man, if you don't knock it off,
that Gervonta Davis stood to make $20 million. $20 million by himself. $20 million guaranteed.
And what was Devin gonna make?
I would have liked for Devin's box office fight to have done better at the box office, but the numbers are what the numbers are, and when Rick puts the number at around 50,000, yeah, I can believe that, because Devin and Bill, like a lot of fighters in this day and age, they're trying to force it.
you know what happened. You know you got the call. And you know you turned it down. You dig? Now you saying call somebody, but we don't know who the person to call, but you the boss.
It's like one big fucking cosplay where every boxer with two hands and two boxing gloves pretends that there's some big draw.
The offer that they claim to have made Shakur Stevenson, I told you, it's all hot air. Whatever they offered him, it wasn't real. It was a sophisticated bluff. And now what they claim to be offering Gervonta Davis, the numbers you bring in.
If you don't knock it off. And you know who I'm talking to.
Don't tell the story where somebody's gonna stake that much money.
Who is gonna give Gervonta $20 million guaranteed? And if they were giving him 20, what were they gonna give you?
Don't listen to none of that propaganda that they're talking about, though. They're talking about numbers, and we had an excellent event, great turnout. It always takes two to tango.
Who would stake that kind of money on a fight between the two of yous when a fight between the two of yous is not going to do what the fight between Gervonta and Ryan did? Devin Haney versus Gervonta Davis don't do 1 million buys. Not right now. Maybe later.
But not right now.
You got the call. You've been served. You've been put on notice.
So the idea that somebody, anybody, was gonna put up that kind of money for the two of yous, it's a tough sell. It's hard to believe.
I think Bill is lying. Like he lied about Shakur Stevenson and he lied about Subriel Matias. I think he's lying here and now, because I can't imagine somebody's going to put up $20 million just for Gervonta.
But what about the numbers Gervonta did with Ryan Garcia? Surely that would justify the $20 million.
No, it wouldn't, because you're not about to do with Devin what you did with Ryan Garcia. Davis versus Haney doesn't bring in 1 million or over 1 million pay-per-view buys at the box office. It could do some numbers, decent numbers, but not those numbers.
Not 1 million, and not right now. What all these kids are doing, you know what they're doing? They're all cosplaying Floyd Mayweather.
And it's not just Bill and Devin.
This is the Devin Haney era, and we're no longer being ambiguous. We're not talking in third person. Devin is the youngest boss in the game. And that's how this thing is going.
They're all cosplaying Floyd Mayweather.
And it's not just Bill and Devin, it's Gervonta too. Yeah, you might have did good numbers in your last fight with Ryan, but that was with Ryan. What were your numbers looking like before that? And what are your numbers about to look like?
They're saying he's coming back in March, that he might be the one that kicks off the new Amazon deal in his next fight. And if he does, and it's with Isaac Cruz, what are those numbers gonna look like?
That doesn't do $1 million. That doesn't do $500,000. Gervonta Davis may be a bigger box office draw than Devin, though in the greater scheme of things, he's not that big a draw at all.
And just hope that, you know what I mean, old boy comes to his senses. Offer still stands. 20 tickets.
You're all cosplaying Floyd and doing a piss poor job of it, because far too many of your fights are ending up behind the paywall and they don't belong there. Devin's performance against Regis really was something special.
But those numbers tell a story of a fight that didn't need to be a pay-per-view, a fight that perhaps more people would have seen if it were part of the regular schedule and not a pay-per-view.
Would have got more exposure.
And if everything he's now doing is going to be put behind a paywall, he's only going to get so far. He's only going to get but so much exposure doing that. Pay-per-view is not for everybody, and it was never supposed to be. It's supposed to be for the biggest of the big fights. These days, every boxer with 2 fists and 2 gloves over him thinks they belong on pay-per-view, and it's a problem.
It's a serious problem in the American market.
None of these kids want to be honest about what they're worth.
None of them are.
Not Devin Haney, and not Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez, who Devin Haney recently spoke to, saying, I get a text. It's Teo, bro. Let's make this fight. He was talking all this bullshit. I'm like, you're in a contract, right? So you've got to go talk to Bob, right? He said, yeah.
Huh?
I'm already in talks with Bob Arum. So what the fuck am I talking to you for? I think he might have been drunk, just like he was drunk the other day when he came to the gym and was talking crazy right before the Regis Prograis fight. Like, I don't want to talk to you. Let me talk to your boss.
A lot of these young guys in boxing are cosplaying bosses, cosplaying promoters. Devin, being a network free agent, a network and promotional free agent, gives him more autonomy than some other fighters as to where he wants to go and who he wants to work with for his fights. But the money to make those fights doesn't actually come from Devin.
Huh?
It comes from whoever he's working with. Case in point, you did a fight with Regis Prograis, but the money to do the fight, it didn't come from you, it came from Matchroom and DAZN.
Huh?
And before that, the money to do the Lomachenko fight, well, that didn't come from DHP, that came from Top Rank and ESPN. So when you say that you've made a $20 million offer to Gervonta Davis, whose $20 million are you using? You said that you made an offer to Shakur Stevenson. With whose money? Because DHP ain't got no broadcast partner. They don't have a network giving them an annual budget to do fights throughout the year.
You are doing is bouncing from one promoter to the next, one promoter that does have a broadcast deal, that does have a platform behind them financing their shows, giving them an annual budget to do those shows, and you're using their money to fight in the fights that you've been fighting in. It reminds me of the mid to late 90s.
That era of hip-hop in the music industry, when every man, woman, and his dog claimed to be their own boss with their own label.
Using the cash advances they got from major labels to flash in their music videos with rented cars and rented jewelry, all of it really just being a facade. And as far as their quote-unquote labels, those were just subsidiaries, tantamount to dummy companies for the real labels, the major labels, the ones with the money.
Because what fucking good is a music label without any money?
It's about as good as a promotional outfit in the sport of boxing without any money. If you ain't got any money to do your own shows, and you're not doing your own shows, you're not brokering your own deals with major broadcasters to do shows, then what kind of promotional outfit are you really?
Huh?
When the Charlos say Lions Only Promotions.
The fuck is that?
Man Down Promotions, or what about Billions, what was supposed to be Adrian Broner's promotional companies? Did they make $1 billion yet?
The fuck is that?
She's not saying that Devin doesn't have more autonomy to move around than some other fighters, because he does, but the disconnect is that he's got $20 million to offer somebody.
So Teofimo called him up, said he wants to do a fight, but he's still under contract, and the story now is that he may be facing Jermaine Ortiz in defense of his newly obtained WBO super lightweight title February 8th in Las Vegas, 3 days prior to Super Bowl Sunday. What happened to all that stuff about Teofimo fighting Ryan Garcia in February? If Ryan took care of business with Oscar Duarte, which he did they scrap that idea?
Told you a bunch of times. That fight happening in that time frame was never realistic. It's not that they may never fight, they might. Just not in February.
I half expected that Teofimo's next fight would come against former unified super lightweight champion Jose Ramirez because he's free and so is Teofimo. Jose's ranked pretty high by way of the WBO and he's right there with Teofimo on the top ranked side of things. Stylistically, I think that would have been a much easier fight for Teofimo than this one, than the fight with Jermaine Ortiz, who is training with Bill Haney now. Thus, Lopez was going to have to deal with the Haneys to some capacity, either way you slice it, whether it was to fight Devin or to fight Jermaine. And you have to wonder, on that predication, is that why he decided to call up Devin? Looking at that Jermaine Ortiz fight, that it might be a high-risk, low-reward fight for February. Fuck it, why not just unify with Devin?
It's more money, and it's a bigger fight.
It would be. Stylistically, the Jose Ramirez fight would have been an easier fight for Teofimo Lopez because a fighter like Jose, a mid-range to inside pressure guy, albeit a big one, an experienced one at this weight, he plays right into Teofimo's strengths the same way that Josh Taylor did.
He's not going to stay out of the pocket, move around, use the ring. He's not going to do any of those things. He's not the kind of fighter that Teofimo has to chase. He'll bring the fight to Teofimo, which plays into Teofimo's counterpunching.
Jose's style plays right into Teofimo's hands, plays into his strengths, whereas Jermaine Ortiz, he's younger than Jose, fresher,
And he has a more layered approach. Jermaine Ortiz, he gave Vasyl Lomachenko all he could handle in the eyes of a few. He deserved to win that fight. And what's Jermaine Ortiz? Guy with some size, youth, speed, athleticism.
and if my memory serves me, he does a bit of switch hitting. No, he's not as popular as Teofimo or some of the other fighters at this weight. He's not as talked about, not as well known, but he is a capable fighter and stylistically seems a more challenging option for Teofimo than Jose Ramirez would have been. I can only deduce that Jose, given the amount of time that he's spent out of the ring,
Maybe he didn't want Teofimo to be his first fight back, and maybe the money, they couldn't make the numbers work.
so Teofimo, he ends up with Jermaine Ortiz, at which point Teofimo starts courting the idea that maybe he should fight Devin Haney next. He calls him up and pitches that idea, at which point Devin blows him off.
This fucking guy talking about.
I like the fight. It's intriguing and to me seems a tougher assignment, a much tougher assignment for young Teofimo than Jose Ramirez would have been.
It's not official yet, but it's only a matter of time before they make it official and make an announcement. Teofimo's got his work cut out for him because Jermaine Ortiz can fight.
Deontay is guaranteeing the knockout. He's saying he's going to steal the show against Joseph Parker.
Yeah.
How are you looking to counter that as the main event?
Good luck to him. Good luck to him, man. Do your thing. I'm gonna do mine. He's gonna do his. What more can I say? I don't really need to talk. I just do what I do. I'm not a talker like that. I'm not a talker. I handle my business. That's all I need to know. I'm gonna do my thing. Trust me.
Awesome.
How would they say it in America? Tell me how I should. You tell me in America what type of vim do I need to bring? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do this and that and that and this. Trust me. I'm from the UK. We stand on our business. I'm standing on my business. I'm gonna handle mine. That's it.
One thing I wondered about when the Day of Reckoning card was first announced and it was rumored that it would be Anthony in the main event. He'd be headlining the show with Otto Wallin and Wilder would be the co-main event. I wondered if Wilder's ego could handle that. And ever since the card was announced, he's been belly aching about it, saying that he should be the one in the main event because his fight is likelier to end in a knockout than Anthony's that he proposed. They should flip a coin over it as if we're in an elementary schoolyard or something like that.
Kid stuff.
No, it's not necessarily confirmed,
Not yet, but it was veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael who first stated that it looks like Anthony's going to be the headliner. He's going to be the one in the main event, rightfully so, because he's the biggest draw of everyone on the show, Deontay Wilder included. Deontay Wilder, who was last in action late last year on pay-per-view, and it didn't sell anything. It didn't do big numbers, so why he's raising this stink.
Latest is that he's determined to steal the show with his fight. He's determined to steal the show from Anthony with his upcoming fight against Joseph Parker. And
As you can see, Anthony was asked about it, and what are you supposed to say? I don't think he has to say anything because in spite of all of Wilder's belly aching and all his promises about stealing the show, he's the main event because he's the bigger star. He's the one on the Forbes list. He's the one with all the big corporate sponsorships and big endorsements, big brands, without the grandstanding you get from Wilder.
Anthony Joshua is more laid back, more relaxed. He's more aloof, whereas Wilder, he's more of a blowhard. And while Americans have an affinity for big talkers and blowhards, that affinity has not been enough to make Wilder a big draw in America, because he couldn't draw much the last time he fought in America.
Some demands from some American fans that Anthony show a bit more spite, a bit more this, and a bit more that. Why appease them when there's not enough of them to make Wilder a star? Who cares what they think?
It didn't help Wilder.
I wondered, what would Wilder's reaction be if Anthony ends up headlining the show and he ends up in the co-main event? Because what that suggests is that Anthony is still the A-side to Deontay Wilder. In truth, he's always been the A-side to Deontay Wilder, but what's a more glaring example than the both of them boxing on the same show, except Wilder's the co-main and Anthony's the main? It doesn't get more literal than that when Anthony's around, you're just an undercard fighter.
Don't you think you're jumping the gun? Do we know for sure that Anthony's gonna headline?
No, we don't. But what stands out is that Deontay Wilder is making these proclamations just a few weeks out from the show, saying that he's going to steal it. He's going to steal the show. Well, he wouldn't have to steal the show if he were the headliner, if he were the main event, but this is what he's saying, which suggests that he's going to be boxing in the co-main, not the main.
Don't you see that he's been doing interviews with everybody and he can't shut the fuck up?
Keeps talking about Anthony, tearing down Anthony, mad about something, and I don't know. Maybe what he's mad about is that Anthony's going to be the main event and his fight is just the co-main event, which suggests that Anthony's the A-side to him.
He always has been.
Well, I know that, and I've said as much many times, but what's a more glaring example for Wilder than boxing on the same show as that guy, and you're the lead-up to his fight? I mean, inside the bubble that he's been in, maybe he's a king.
Inside that bubble, but outside, you're a co-main.